Hi, this is Dr. Abidemi once again. And in this class, we're going to take a look at productivity or economic growth. Productivity or economic growth. So after this section, you will understand the determinants of productivity or economic growth, understand the basic economic growth theories, and know what a production function is. All right. So we are not going to dive into um, in depth in the production function. That will be for later videos or later classes, much more advanced classes. Okay. In this section, we'll just teach you the principles, generally the principles of macroeconomics. All right. So what is productivity? Uh, Productivity measures how efficiently factor inputs. So, of course, you know, when I say factor inputs, I'm talking about the factors of production are used to produce outputs, which is goods and services. It also refers to the quantity of goods and services that a worker or any other factor of production can produce in a specific time. All right, so productivity measures the efficiency of the factor input. The factor inputs are known as factors of production. Okay, now let's go take a look at the determinants of productivity or economic growth. Uh, First of them is fiscal capital. What is fiscal capital? A fiscal capital entails the physical tools or equipment used to produce other goods and services. For example, buildings, machinery, factories. If these tools or types of equipment are up to date, a worker can become more productive. Fiscal capital can also be used to produce further fiscal capital, and these can be called investments. All right. So, what are the determinants of economic growth or productivity? First of all, is fiscal capital. So, if one has much more advanced fiscal capital, then that worker can be able to do his work much better. Okay, can be able to do his or her work much faster, much better with less stress. Okay. The second one is human capital. So human capital refers to knowledge, skills, and experience that people have, which help them work better. It is an intangible asset that contributes to productivity, personal well-being, and economic growth. So we also have natural resources. So we've mentioned physical capital, we've mentioned human capital. Now we are mentioning natural resources. Natural resources are inputs into production that are provided by nature, such as land, rivers, and mineral deposits. Natural resources can be renewable or non-renewable. Okay, so renewable natural resources are resources that can replenish itself. And this includes solar, wind, hydro, forest, fish, wildlife, geothermal, etc. You can imagine if the sun stops shining. You can imagine if we don't have seas anymore. You can imagine if we don't have wind. Human beings will not be able to survive. All right. So whether you like it or not, the sun is going to shine at least every day. Or whether you like it or not, the wind is going to blow every day. Or whether you like it or not, you're going to have water, the sea is right there. You know, whether you like it or not, the forests, they are very important for humans and wildlife in general. Okay, so these are natural resources that replenish itself, whether you like it or not. Right? Can anyone destroy the sun? No, no human being can destroy the sun. All right. So on the other hand, non-renewable energy cannot replenish itself. Of course, when I talk about sun, when I talk about trees, I'm talking about the earth. I don't know what happens in another planet. All right. But this earth that we are in, these um, things I just mentioned are needed for our survival, and they replenish themselves. Not only do they replenish themselves, they even provide energy electricity that we need to uh, to power our economic activities. Right. All right. What about non-renewable energy? Okay. For non-renewable energy, it cannot replenish itself or cannot be replenished quickly, and this includes oil, gas, coal, etc. All right. And for example, can you destroy an oil well, or where you find oil as a natural resource? Yes, you can destroy. And once you destroy, you could. That means that you might not be able to get back what has been destroyed. Okay, maybe you have to go and explore another land or explore another area to find out if you can see oil right there. Okay, technological knowledge. Technological knowledge means the understanding of the best ways to produce goods and services. Technological knowledge can be common knowledge or proprietary knowledge. Common knowledge is knowledge that is available to everyone, while proprietary knowledge is not available to everyone. It is only known to the organization or individuals that discovered it. Okay? So let's dive a little bit into the production function. So a production function simply talks about the mathematical relationship between input and output. So a simple production function can be written as output as a function of capital and labor. Okay, this is output, this is capital, and this is labor. Okay, so I said Y can be output, real GDP or economic growth. K is capital, L is labor. We can also have what we call a Cobb-Douglas production function, and this can be written as Q equals AK alpha, L beta, or it can also be written as Q equals AK alpha, L1 minus alpha. They mean the same. Okay, so Q is total output, A is total factor productivity, for example, technology, K is capital, L is labor, alpha and beta are output elasticity of labor and capital. They show how much labor and capital contribute to production. Furthermore, if alpha plus beta equals to 1, we call it constant returns to scale. And what does that mean? Doubling labor and capital will also double output with the same proportion. If alpha of beta is greater than 1, we call it increasing returns to scale. What does that mean? It means doubling labor and capital will more than double output. We can also have alpha plus beta is less than 1. What does it mean? It means decreasing returns to scale, which means doubling labor and capital, you have less than a doubled output. The key feature of the Cobb-Douglas production function is that it shows how labor and capital contribute to production and is commonly used in economic growth models. Now, let us take a look at those economic growth models. We can have classical growth model, we can have neoclassical growth model, or a exogenous growth model. So neoclassical is also called exogenous growth model, or solo swan model, or solo model. Now, let's go through the classical growth model. Of course, part of the classicalists are people like Adam Smith, David Ricardo, Thomas Robert Malthus. The basic idea behind a classical growth model is that uh, government intervention should be minimal. Okay, they talked about laissez-faire or the free market economy, all right, where buyers and sellers can decide on how they want to interact with one another, while the government just provides a suitable guideline on how they should operate. Okay, but in the classical group model, I also want to talk about the Malthusian population theory or the Malthusian theory. In the classical group model, we have economics like Adam Smith, David Ricardo, Thomas Robert Malthus. We will focus on the Malthusian theory in this section. Malthus argued that an ever-increasing population would continually strain society's ability to provide for itself. As a result, mankind was doomed to forever live in poverty. Okay, there's some element of truth in that, because we don't want a situation where the population is growing exponentially or doubling while the food supply is growing in a linear form. Nobody wants that. We want a situation where if the population is growing um, exponentially, then the food supply must grow faster than that so that, I mean, the needs of the global economy can be met. So fortunately, Matthew's their forecast was far off the mark, although world population has increased about sixfold over the past 2 centuries. Living standards around the world are, on average, much higher. Where did Matthews go wrong? He assumed correctly that the world population would rise exponentially, since as more people are born and survive, more and more people are born as their children, and so on. He also assumed incorrectly that the amount of food produced could rise only linearly by increasing the amount of land under cultivation, with, with productivity remaining constant. Growth in mankind's ingenuity over the years has offset the effect of larger population. Pesticide, fertilizers, mechanized farm equipment, new crop varieties, and other technological advances that mortals never imagined have allowed each farmer to feed ever greater numbers of people. Even with people with more mouths to feed, fewer farmers are necessary because each farmer is so much more productive than mortals ever imagined. Okay, so now we have technological advancement, and technological advancement that made it much easier for farming to take place, for farming to occur. In fact, it has increased the productivity of agriculture. All right. So yes, we don't want a situation where the population is rising faster than food supply, but technological advancement has made things much more better. What about new classical growth theory or exogenous growth theory? So in 1956, Robert Solow and Trevor Swan identified the rate of human and physical capital and population growth as being key determinants of economic growth. This theory asserts that real GDP per person grows because technological change induces a level of saving and investment that makes capital power of labor grow. Growth ends if technological change stops. What about new growth theory? The new growth theory is the endogenous growth theory. Endogenous growth theory is a theory of long-run economic growth which results from the creation of new knowledge and technology, which impacts on everyone and makes them more productive as a result. Endogenous growth theory highlights the importance of knowledge. Oh, yeah. So, one of the things that makes the difference between endogenous and exogenous growth theory is that endogenous growth theory or the new growth theory is very particular or emphatic on the concept of knowledge. They believe knowledge does not diminish. Okay, it doesn't experience diminishing returns. Whatever you know stays with you, whether right or whether good or bad. All right. So endogenous growth theory highlights the importance of knowledge, innovation, and human capital in generating long-term economic growth. It shows that as economies create more ideas and technologies, everyone becomes more productive and the economy continues to grow indefinitely. This is different from models that rely on increasing capital and labor, which faces diminishing returns over time. You see, I just mentioned. So, what are some of the other factors that can influence economic growth? We have macroeconomic stability, we have trade policies, we have the nature and quality of institutions and governance. That is how effectively the rule of law operates and how well governments can control corruption in the country concerned. Right? So I usually mention to my students that if you have a strong rule of law, if you have a strong legal system, that can that can move a country from developing to a developed country because rule of law is it helps people to be accountable. When you know that if you are corrupt or if you steal natural resources or a nation's resources, you will be uh, uh, you'll be tried in the court. You wouldn't, and I mean, if you are being found guilty, because the legal system is very transparent, you wouldn't want to do things that would hurt the society because you know that there are repercussions for them. Okay, so you don't want a situation where individuals are greater than your rule of law. If individuals are greater than a rule of law, it means that they can bend it to their wish. And you would see that in those countries, you see a lot of underdevelopment in those countries. Why? Because individuals can do whatever they wish. They are not accountable. They are greater than the constitution of the land. Okay? So the extent to which, number four, is the extent to which violence, war, and conflict exists in a country. I used to say to my students, if you can avoid war, violence, or conflict, as a leader, you have to find a way to always avoid it. Because you know the beginning of a conflict, it might take years and years and years and years. That's if the conflict ends. Now take a look at our war. The conflicts that we have today are conflicts that have started long time. It could just be as a result of something very little, very small. So as a leader, if you can avoid conflict with a lot of wisdom, you need to get that done. Because in conflict, the amount of money that should be spent on economic development, you will spend it on guns. You're going to lose lives. You're going to lose properties. And anyone who is dead is dead. You can't get them back. Right? So if you can avoid that with a lot of diplomacy, with a lot of wisdom, with a lot of uh, ethical compromise, then that will be one of the best things to do. All right. So five, you have regional characteristics such as whether the country as part of Europe, North America, Asia, or Sub-Saharan Africa. So for example, I told my students, if you pick a developing countries and put them in the midst of developed countries, do you think that that developing country will become developed? Yes, it will, especially if it's at the mid, if it's at the center or among the developed countries. Why? Because they're going to share best practices, rule of law. Uh, they would also have infrastructural development. If those countries that are developed have a very solid educational system, then the developing country, we have no choice than to also have a solid educational system. Okay, you also have geographical factors like fiscal resource endowments and climate, then extent to which a country is competitive in international markets, and international factors such as amount of productive land available, right? And so you have your review questions right here, okay? So that is that for productivity and economic growth. Every country wants to be sure that it keeps growing. Not just growing, every country also wants to be sure that that economic growth is spread around across the population. It's not just for the economy to grow in terms of numbers. We also want the growth in terms of numbers to foster growth in terms of individuals. Okay, so growth in terms of numbers cuts across growth in terms of the whole population. All right. So thank you for sticking with me. I'm going to see you in my next class. And if you have questions, you can uh, ask your questions in the comment section. Thank you very much and see you in my next class.